Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heather. I'm a fitness and sports instructor at 8 Wing CFB Trenton. I'm going to be teaching a flexibility mobility fusion class for you today. So it's going to have a little bit more of a yoga focus this morning. Feel free to play some music on your end. I won't be playing any music over here, but if you want to follow along with some music in the background, you are welcome to do that. Make sure you work at your own pace throughout class today. I don't often give water breaks or anything like that when doing more of a yoga flow, so take breaks whenever you need to. Grab a sip of water, jump back in when you can. I'll give some options throughout of things that you can do to make it a little bit lower impact for yourself if I'm offering up some more challenging poses this morning. I'm just gonna read over a quick disclaimer that you can also find in the notes or the description of this class. In response to COVID-19, PSP is offering virtual fitness to Canadian Armed Forces members. By using social media platforms, the virtual fitness classes tailored to Canadian Armed Forces personnel become accessible to all. Participants who are not Canadian Armed Forces members recognize and acknowledge that their age, health status, and physical fitness level are unknown, and it's entirely up to each individual to assess their ability to participate in a class. Since it's preferable to consult your physician before beginning any exercise program, we invite all participants who are not Canadian Armed Forces members to consult the Get Active questionnaire of the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology and its reference document. If you experience any pain or difficulty during the exercises presented in this video, it's recommended that you stop and consult a healthcare provider. If any CAF members sustain an injury during this video, please remember to fill out a CF98. So as I said, we were going to be doing more of a yoga-focused mobility and flexibility class this morning. So if you have a mat set up, great, you can head over to your mat. Make sure you have some water to sip on whenever you need to. And we are going to get started in a fully reclined position, so coming all the way down onto your back. So from our reclined position, we're just going to kind of stretch ourselves out along the mat here. So coming into a little bit of relaxation here before we jump into some of our warm-up flows before we get into the main body of our practice today. So just letting your body kind of sink into the mat for a few moments here. Doing a little bit of a body check here. So if you find that you have any particular areas where you're holding on to a lot of tension or stress, try to let those go here before we get into our practice this morning. So if you're holding on to a lot of tension through your neck, shoulders, jaw, just try to release that, focusing on your breathing. If you find that you've been exercising a lot lately and you're feeling a little bit of soreness in a particular area, just be mindful of that as we work our way through our poses. Don't do anything that feels painful. If it does, just back off a little bit, come back to the last place that did feel comfortable. And from our fully reclined position, we're going to pull one knee in towards our chest. So you can hold on to that knee underneath or over top of that knee. We're just going to take that knee into some hip circles. So just kind of assisting that leg along, just going through whatever range of motion feels comfortable on that hip to start out this morning. And we'll take those rotations the other direction, staying on that same side. Pull that knee back through center. We're going to cross that knee over the midline of our body. So just coming across here, you can extend those arms out to either side, getting a nice little twist through the spine here. If you want to add a little bit more, you can look away from that leg, looking out over that opposite shoulder. As you look up overhead, you can bring that knee back through center, pull that knee in, and then extend all the way out along your mat. Other side, pull that knee in, holding on just underneath that knee or over top. We're going to take that other side into some hip circles. Again, just moving through whatever range of motion feels comfortable on that hip to start out this morning. Keeping in mind that that range of motion may look different from one side to the other. And taking those hip circles the other way. Bring that knee back through center. Then we're going to take that knee and cross over the midline of our body. If you want to add a little bit more to that twist, you can look out over that opposite shoulder. Pull that knee back in through center as you look up overhead. Give that knee a little squeeze up top and then extend all the way out along your mat. We're going to start to pull those feet in, so feet are flat on your mat. We're going to tuck our hips under, and we're going to come up into a bridge. So you're going to think about your spine going up one vertebrae at a time. So starting off by peeling the hips up off the floor and slowly pushing those hips up towards the ceiling, getting a squeeze through your glutes and hamstrings at the top, hold at the top. As we come down, going the opposite way we came up, so coming down one vertebrae at a time as you kind of round through that lower back. So last thing to drop would be your hips. And relax at the bottom. Tuck the tailbone under, peel that spine up off the floor as you pull up into that bridge. Squeeze at the top, hold at the top. Coming back down, one vertebrae at a time, slowly back down to your mat. Good. From here, you're going to pull both knees in towards your chest. And we're going to take it into a forward and back rock to transition up to a seated position. So you can hold on over top or underneath your knees. And you're just going to rock forward and back along the spine 3 or 4 times, eventually coming all the way up into a seated. You're going to cross at the ankle. And from that cross leg position, we're going to continue forward, coming into a tabletop position. So knees are lined up underneath your hips, wrists are lined up underneath your shoulders, and from here we're going to sit all the way back into a child's pose. So it's sitting those hips back on those feet, extend those hands up towards the top of your mat, and you can rest your head down on the mat if that's comfortable. And we're just going to relax here for a few breaths. If at any point you feel like you need a little bit more of a rest from whatever pose we're doing, you can always come back to this child's pose. From here, we're going to walk both hands over to one side of the mat, still staying down in that child's pose. If you can rest your head down again, that's an option. Really reaching through those fingertips. Walk those hands back through center and then over to the other side of your mat. Walk those hands back through center. We're going to come back up into our tabletop position here. We're going to come through a few cat-cow stretches. So you're going to tuck your chin and tuck your tailbone under as you push up through those shoulder blades, rounding up through the back. And then to reverse that, we're going to drop our belly button towards the floor, pull your shoulders back and down, look straight ahead, scoop out through that back. Tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone, round the back up, pushing up through those shoulder blades. And drop the belly button towards the floor, scoop out through that back. Pull those shoulders back and down. Come back to that neutral spine tabletop position. From here, we're going to bring our shoulder and our hip a little closer together on one side as you look back at your shoulder or back towards your feet. Getting a nice stretch through that opposite side. Come back through center. Other side, you're going to bring your shoulder and hip closer together on that side as you get that stretch through the opposite side. Come back through center, back to that first side, shoulder and hip closing off that space. Come back through center and over to that second side one more time, shoulder and hip coming together. And come on back through center. From here, I'm going to have you move your feet a little bit closer together so feet are touching, and you're going to widen your knees along the mat. You're going to sit all the way back on your heels one more time, coming into a wide leg child's pose. And think about reaching toward the top edge of your mat with those fingertips. Pushing yourself back up towards that tabletop, you're going to walk those knees back in, so knees are lining up underneath hips, hands underneath shoulders. And we're going to come up into our first downward facing dog. So you're going to tuck your toes under, you're going to push your hips up and back, coming into that inverted V shape. And in our first downward facing dog, you can walk it out through your heels a little bit. Just getting a nice stretch through the calves and the hamstrings. And just trying to settle into that downward dog a little bit more. So shifting your weight towards your lower body. You can look to the space between your feet or maybe up towards your legs. And from here, we're going to look to the space between our hands. As we shift our weight forward, we're going to step our feet in towards our hands, bending into the knees to start. So from here, you can have your hands in contact with the floor. either fingertips or that full hand. And you can use the floor to try to press up through those legs, trying to create a little bit more length. From here, we're going to sweep our arms up overhead, bringing our hands to touch over top and coming into a little bit of a back bend if that feels comfortable. And bring those arms just down to your sides. From here, we'll inhale those arms up overhead, hands to touch at the top, little back bend at the top if that feels comfortable. And as we exhale and let our arms fall forward, we're going to come back into that forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, hands can slide up the shins or stay in contact with the floor as your back comes to a parallel position with the floor. Exhale, come all the way back down, hands to the floor. Step your feet back into that high plank. From your plank, you're going to drop to your knees, lower down, elbows stay in nice and close. Flip through your feet, little chest lift, look straight ahead. Lower the chest back down towards the floor, push back up onto your knees, tuck your toes under, push up and back into your downward dog. So we're going to ramp the intensity up a little bit more on our next round through, but feel free to stick to that variation if that felt good for you. I'm going to hold here for a few more breaths. From here, look to the space between your hands. You can step your feet in or jump them into that forward fold. Inhale, sweep those arms up overhead. And exhale, arms just down to your sides. Inhale, arms up, hands to touch at the top, little back bend at the top. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, hands slide up the shins. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, step or jump back to your high plank. Exhale, lower down through chaturanga. You can drop to your knees if you need to. Inhale, chest lift or full extension of the arms. And exhale into downward facing dog. Few more breaths here. Look to the space between your hands, step or jump the feet into your forward fold. Inhale, sweep those arms all the way up overhead. And exhale, arms down to your sides. Inhale, arms up. Hands come together at the top, little back bend. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, step or jump to your high plank. Exhale, lower down through chaturanga. Baby cobra or up dog. And exhale into your downward facing dog. Nice job. Hold here for a few breaths. From our downward facing dog, we're going to come into a three-legged dog. So you're going to push one heel up towards the ceiling. From here, you're going to drive that knee forward just to hover between the hands, hold here. Push all the way back up into into three-legged dog. We're going to bend into that knee and we're going to open that hip up to the side wall. From here, we're going to rotate back through center. We're going to shoot that foot through, landing between the hands here. From here, we're going to drop our back knee down towards the floor, extend through that back foot, And arms are going to come up as we push that hip through at the front. From here, we're going to let our opposite arm to that front leg drop towards the floor as we rotate towards that front leg. We're going to bring both arms back up overhead. We're going to walk that foot out just a little bit towards the side edge of the mat, and then we're going to let our arm that's on the same side as that leg drop to the floor as we rotate away from that front leg. Let that arm lower down so both hands are now on the inside edge of that front leg, and you're going to walk that foot out a little bit farther towards that side edge of the mat. So from here, you can bring your hand that's closest to that front leg just up onto that knee for a little bit of support. And keeping that front foot flat, you're going to let that foot drop out to the side. It's not a very big movement. And then bring that knee back through center. Keep that foot flat, let that knee drop out to the side just a little. You can use that hand to kind of support that knee. Come back in through center. This time, if you're comfortable, you can let yourself come onto the outside edge of this front foot. So let that knee drop out to the side, and then bring that hand back in through center. If you're comfortable here, you can stay here. If you want to come down a little bit farther, you can drop to your opposite elbow first. If that feels okay and you want a little bit more, you can drop your other elbow down as well. If you're down on one or both forearms, you're going to start to walk yourself back up onto your hands. You're going to let that foot come back down flat. Take that hand, walk it to the outside edge of that front foot. And from here, we are going to tuck our toes under on that back foot. We're going to try to shift our weight onto this front leg as we step that back foot in to meet that front foot coming into a forward fold. From our forward fold hands to the floor, we're going to jump back to our plank. And then from our plank, we're going to lower down through chaturanga, chest lift or full extension of the arms, and right back into your downward dog. Hold here for a few breaths. From here, we're going to take our opposite leg into that three-legged dog. We'll drive our knee forward to hover. Come back to that three-legged dog. Rotate open through the hip as you bend into that knee. And as you bring that hip back to center, step the foot through. Drop your back knee down, extend through that back foot. And then from here, lifting those arms up overhead. From here, we're going to drop our opposite arm to that front leg towards the floor. as we rotate open towards that front leg. Bring those arms back up overhead. As you walk that front leg out a little bit farther, you're going to drop the arm that's on the same side and rotate away from that front leg. We'll drop that hand down to the mat. And we're going to walk that foot out a little bit farther out to that side edge. Bring that hand that's closest to that front leg. You're just going to keep that front foot flat on the floor as you let that knee drop out to the side. So using that hand to support a little bit if that feels good. Come back through center. Let it drop out to the side, keeping the foot flat one more time. And back through center. This time, if you're comfortable, coming into the outside edge of that front foot. You can let that hand fall back through center if that's comfortable. If you want a little bit more, you're going to start with that arm that's farthest away from that front leg. You can drop down onto that forearm. And if that's comfortable and you want to drop the other side, you can here. If you're down on your forearms, you can start to walk yourself back up onto your hands. And let that foot come back through center. Walk the hand over to the outside edge of that foot. So one hand on either side of that front foot. This time we're going to be stepping our front foot back to meet that back foot. So we're going to tuck our toes under on that back foot. And we will step that foot through. From here, from your plank position, we're going to lower down through chaturanga. Chest lift or up dog. And exhale into your downward facing dog. We're going to go through another hip opener here. So we're going to start out in our three-legged dog again. Once again, we're going to open up through that hip, looking under the arm. And as we rotate our hips back through center, we're going to drive that knee through, land it behind the wrist on the same side. Rotate that foot open behind the opposite wrist. Drop your back knee down. Extend through that back foot. And you're just going to shift that back leg a little bit farther back. So staying on the hands if that feels comfortable, or if you'd like, you can start to come down onto your forearms. If you want a little bit more extension than that, you can extend those arms out farther and think about trying to bring your chest down a little bit more towards the floor. If you're down in that full extension, you can start to walk your hands back up onto your forearms. If you're on your forearms, you can start to walk back up onto your hands. From here, we are going to tuck our toes under on that back leg, and we're going to push all the way back up into three-legged dog first. So tuck those toes under, push that leg all the way up and back, and then drop down into your downward dog. From here, we'll move over to the other side. So we're going to come into our three-legged dog on that side and rotate that hip open. As we rotate those hips back to center, we're going to drive our knee through, land it behind the wrist on the same side, rotate that foot open, drop the back knee down, and start to extend a little bit more through that back leg. If you want to stay upright here, if that feels more comfortable, you can stay here, or you can start to drop down onto your forearms if that's a little bit more comfortable. And if you want to take it even farther down, you can start to extend through those arms. If you're in that full extension, you can start to walk those arms back in. You can come up onto those hands, tuck the toes under, and just like before, we're going to push all the way back into three-legged dog first. So toes are tucked under, lift up off that leg, push all the way up and back, and then land in that downward dog. From here, we're going to look to the space between our hands. We're going to bend into those knees, jump the feet forward. Coming into your forward fold. And then we're slowly going to roll ourselves up one vertebrae at a time here. Roll those shoulders out at the top. Coming into a standing hip opener now, so we're going to work on our balance a little bit here. You're going to ground into one side, so creating that nice stable base of support on one foot. You're slowly going to shift the weight over onto that side and start to lift up off of that, that first foot. When you're comfortable, you can start to come up onto the toe. And if you feel like you have a good stable base here, you can start to lift up that leg. So you can hold on to that knee either over top, underneath, whatever feels okay to start. And if you're comfortable here, you're going to start to externally rotate that hip, so coming out to the side open. From here, we're going to come back through center. And here's where our hip opener is going to come into play. So we're going to take the hand on the same side, we're going to slide it down to our ankle. So if this feels like more than enough, you can stay here. If you want a little bit more, you can transfer your foot into your other hand, and you're going to try to get that outside edge of that foot to tuck into our opposite hip flexor. And as you do that, you're going to let that knee drop down towards the floor. So really nice standing hip opener here. Working on the balance at the same time. If you want a little bit more here, you can come into a forward fold from here. So you can start to hinge forward at the hip. Maybe you just bend forward a little bit, and that's enough to, deepen that stretch in that hip. And you don't want to go any farther. If you want, you can start to hinge even farther forward. Maybe hands are coming down towards the floor. in that forward fold, you're going to bend into the knee of that supporting leg and slowly try to come back up. From here, you're going to release that foot, bring that knee back out in front, and then drop that foot down, walk out through those feet. Before we move on to our other side, we'll just come into a forward fold here. So we're going to inhale those arms up overhead, a little back bend at the top, and then sweep those arms forward as you come into a forward fold. And from this forward fold, if you want to sink into it a little bit more, maybe you're grabbing onto opposite elbows and just kind of letting yourself hang here, trying to keep that length through the hamstrings. If you want, you can hold on to the backs of your legs as an option. And from here, we're going to roll ourselves up one vertebrae at a time, coming back up into that stand. Roll those shoulders out at the top. Good. From here, we're going to start to create our stable base on the other side to repeat that standing hip opener. So create that nice stable base on your second side and start to shift the weight over onto that leg. You can start to lift up off the foot of that other side, the one that you're going to be lifting as you shift your weight over. When and if you're comfortable, you can start to bring that knee up in front, so either holding on out front or underneath, whatever feels comfortable for you. And we're going to start to externally rotate that hip if that feels comfortable. My balance is a little bit off this morning. From here, you can slowly come back through center. If you want to stay here, you can stay here, or you can even stay in that externally rotated position with that hip. If you're comfortable, you're going to slide your hand down to that ankle. Maybe this is enough, maybe you want to stay here. If you want a little bit more, you're going to shift the grip into that other hand. Bring the outside edge of that foot to the hip flexor on the opposite side. And as you do that, you're letting your knee kind of drop down towards the floor. If you want a little bit more from here, you can start to add that little bit of a forward fold. Possibly bringing your hands down towards the floor. If you're in that forward fold, you're going to bend into that supporting knee. Slowly start to bring yourself back up to a stand. Release that knee to the front, and then drop that foot down. Walk out through those feet a little bit. From here, we're going to take some steps out nice and wide on that mat. So both feet are pointing towards the top edge of that mat. We're going to come into a wide leg forward fold here. So shoulders roll back, back is nice and flat. You're going to hinge from the hip first, keeping your back as straight as you can. Once you've gone as far forward as you can that way, then you can start to round into your back. So nice flat back into that fold to start, and then you can start to round into the back at that point. From our forward fold, if you need to bend your knees to get your hands down to the floor, you can do that now. What we're going to start to do is shift our weight over into one side. And as we do that, we're going to try to flip our foot open on that opposite side. So if you can sink even lower than this, go for it. This is about as low as I can go on this side. Shift that weight back into that forward fold, so legs are straightening out again. And as you walk your hands over to the other side, shifting your weight over, you're gonna rotate that knee open, or that foot open. Shift your weight back through center. And from here, we're gonna walk our feet in a little bit. So try and keep your hands on the floor if you can. And then from here, we are gonna try to hold onto our feet and sink into a deep squat from that forward fold. So you can use your elbows on the insides of those knees. Maybe you need to adjust your feet a little bit at the bottom. From here, hands to the floor, straighten out through those legs. Roll yourself all the way up to a stand. Walk those feet back in. And we are going to transition back down to the floor. So inhale those arms up. A little back bend at the top if that's comfortable. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, step or jump the feet back into your plank. Lower down through chaturanga. Inhale, chest lift or up dog. And exhale into that downward facing dog. We're going to hold for a few more breaths here, and then we're going to transition onto our backs. So if you want to just drop to your knees and then have a seat, that's an option. If you want to try to jump through to come into seat, basically what you're going to do is jump your feet towards your hands like you would if you were coming into a forward fold, but you're going to cross at the ankles and try to sit down. So if you want to try that option, you're going to bend into your knees, get ready for that jump through, cross at the ankles and have a seat. Feet to the floor. You're going to extend those feet all the way out. And we're going to slowly come all the way down onto our mats to come into our final relaxation. So we're going to roll all the way down nice and slow. Come all the way back down to your mat. And a couple options here in your final relaxation. So I'm just going to get you set up for it. And then you can stay here as long as you would like before you move on with your day. So option one, most common option for your final relaxation would be to be in this fully extended position. So palms are facing up towards the ceiling, feet are maybe dropping out to the sides, relaxing through those legs. And the biggest focus here is just trying to let your body really sink into the mat, let your breathing come back down to a more natural rhythm. You can close your eyes, just try to relax through all areas of your body, especially those that are carrying a lot of tension. So neck, face, jaw, maybe through your hips. If your lower back is bothering you, here's where you can kind of switch things up a little bit. So you can bring your feet flat on the mat, so you're kind of taking some of that pressure off your lower back. So you can stay here for your final relaxation. Another option would be to bring those feet closer together, let those knees drop out to the sides. If that feels good on your hips, you can stay here for your final relaxation. And just kind of doing whatever feels good there, taking this opportunity to once again do a full body check. So maybe those areas that were feeling a little bit tight towards the beginning of your stretch feel a little bit better now. Maybe you're feeling some tension in other areas that you may want to focus on and stretch a little bit more before you wrap things up for this morning. And then whenever you're ready, so again, staying here as long as you like, whenever you're ready, you're just going to start to bring movement back into your body. So maybe rotations through the wrists, opening and closing the hands, movement through the feet, moving your head side to side on the mat. And then whenever you are ready to get up, you're just going to roll over onto one side. And then use your hands to press yourself back up into a seated position. So that is going to be it for our stretch today. So thanks for joining me for flexibility and mobility. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video and I will get back to you. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thanks, guys.